Coleman.
Here.
Commissioner Riddick.
Here.
Commissioner Parnell.
Here.
Commissioner Paxton.
Here.
Commissioner Roxanne.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll all rise and face the flag.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Counselor, do we have public comments today?
I have no public comment cards. Is there anyone here who came today to make a public comment who did not fill out a card? I have one. Thank you. All right. Brenda Johnson. You can stand wherever you like.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a fairly new transplant to the area. I am a longtime transit advocate, and I'm hoping to advocate strongly for transit in the Hampton Roads area. I have in my hands the Virginia Transit Association legislative priorities. I know that one of the things that we are very interested in is, of course, dedicated funding. But also the other items that they have on their list are the transit funding gap and establishing a gas tax floor because we've lost so much revenue because gas prices went down so low. And also creating the Metro Rail Safety Commission. And one of the things that I find interesting about it is that it says that if we don't develop this Metro Rail Safety Commission, that it doesn't just affect WMATA, that it also affects all rail operations in the state. So, because federal funding could be pulled. So I'd like to hear a little more about that issue, if I may. Also, I'm interested in joining TRAC because I want to serve HRT. I definitely want to push more issues, especially on the peninsula, but regional as well. So, just introducing myself and hoping to work with all of you to promote transit.
Mr. Harold, can you have somebody get with her so she can
Yes,
find out?
very much so, when she's at the TPO meetings, and we'd love to have you engaged.
Any other comments?
Is there anyone else here to make a public comment? I see none.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing? So moved. Motion by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Parnell. Any discussion? Call the vote.
Chairman Wood.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury.
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller.
Yes.
Commissioner Starr.
Yes.
Commissioner Openshaw.
Yes.
Commissioner Moffitt.
Yes.
Commissioner Canoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Riddick.
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yes.
Commissioner Parnell.
Yes.
Commissioner Paxton.
Yes.
Commissioner Roxanne.
Yes.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of November 10, 2016. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Coleman, seconded by Commissioner Fuller. Any corrections? There was a correction that the attorney mentioned.
That we refer to Secretary of Transportation, Aubrey Lane, as Secretary instead of Mr.
So the correction would be to change it from Mr. to Secretary. Everybody, you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
He was King Neptune, we can refer to him. Throw that out. Okay, nobody wants to do that one. So, any further discussion? Okay, call the vote, please.
Chairman Wood.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury.
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller.
Yes.
Commissioner Starr.
Yes.
Commissioner Openshaw.
Abstain.
Commissioner Moffitt.
Yes.
Commissioner Canoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman.
Yes.
Commissioner Riddick.
Abstain.
Commissioner Parnell.
Abstain.
Commissioner Paxton.
Yes.
Commissioner Roxanne.
Yes.
Chairman, minutes have been approved.
Okay, Mr. Harold, President's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome everyone. And certainly pleased to have City Manager Bory here from Newport News as well. no public comments, so that wasn't included in the package. We didn't have any. We do have a social media report as required by the amended bylaws, and that's it. I'll be very brief because we do have a fairly robust agenda. But in terms of the year in review, and my letter covered some of the high points that we're very proud of. You know, our vision here is for Hampton Roads Transit to become the most efficient and customer-driven transit agency in the state, and we really are trying to cultivate that level of culture here. You know, our mission is to connect Hampton Roads with quality public transportation, and you know, we believe our focus on cost efficiencies will help us get there. We have been laser focused on the goals that the Commission established for us. One on the high capacity studies to include the Virginia Beach Transit Extension, although that didn't move forward. I was very proud of the effort that we were able to put forward. We were certainly able to get that project completed with crisp numbers, which we're very, very proud of. We got that project done under budget as well. We are proceeding, as you know, with the Peninsula Corridor Study. We've engaged both the Hampton and Newport News City Councils. We intend to move that project forward. We've gotten a lot of feedback on that, so we intend to continue our efforts there. Naval Station Norfolk, and there was some discussion earlier about maybe some short-term ideas that the city of Norfolk is trying to advance as well. We will be kicking off that western evaluation, and we updated the board in terms of looking at options to serve the west that we can bring into the DEIS process, which will encompass the eastern corridor as well. So we are very much proceeding on those high capacity transit studies. The other two goals, and I'll be very brief on those, much like transit agencies throughout the country, we've seen a dip in ridership. So we have advanced initiatives to improve ridership, to include the Student Freedom Pass, and I know we'll be doing a Title VI review of that today to share with the board. We also have initiated tri-transit passes, and Gene Cavazos, our marketing and communications person, has really been leading a lot of those efforts. Also, with the increase in the paratransit rates that were approved by the board, we do allow paratransit eligible riders to ride free on fixed route. And we are seeing significant increases. So Keith Johnson is tracking that very well. We think that's going to be helpful as well as we try to deal with the high cost of paratransit while giving greater freedom to our riders. The final recommendation that the board had was focusing on our financial position, letter of credit, things of that nature. You know, I'm very, very proud, and you got a report at your audit and budget committee. I think as Mr. Singleton mentioned, this is the third or fourth straight year where there hadn't been any findings. And I recall when I joined the agency in 2012, then Chair Barclay Wynn very much, I think, chastised us about some of the earlier findings that were made about the agency. So I really want to thank our finance staff and budget staff and really all of the departments, because we all play a role in cost controls and things of that nature. And certainly we facilitated a very good relationship with our internal auditor. It's really important in terms of making sure that we are a good investment. As we look forward to bring forward Connect Hampton Roads, people will say, well, is HRT a good agency to invest in? And clearly we want to be able to make the statement that we are. So we're very proud of our production this year and our focus on cost efficiencies. One of those areas you'll recall is the area of risk management. That started several years ago with our staff attorney getting very involved in that. But we've continued the organizational improvements to address that. And we recently were recognized by the 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Workers' Compensation and Disability Management Award for excellence in our workers' compensation risk management program. So at this time, we're going to have, this is very nice here. Can I keep this on my desk? Is that possible? Actually, I had nothing to do with it. I'd like to have Kim Ackerman come forward and
the Teddy Award, let me kind of give you a little background on what it is. Basically, the Teddy Award is named after Theodore Roosevelt. He is the president who enacted the workers' compensation legislation. So it basically is the federal regulation, the foundation for the workers' comp program. There were over 100 applications. There were 3 recipients of it. It's the public, the nonprofit, and the private. We were the recipient of the public. So very exciting. It's a great honor to receive it. It's been a lot of hard work, and I want to mention a couple of things in terms of, if I could just mention a few statistics for you. Over the past 5 years, we've had a 98% decline in lost time claims. We've had a 48% decrease in the frequency of injuries. When we looked at 2015, 2016 alone, we've reduced the average claims lost time, reporting time from 5.7 to 3.7 days. That's pretty important because the reporting time definitely impacts your cost. The other thing we've been able to do is our incurred cost per claim. The high was over $17,000. For 15-16 fiscal year, we reduced it to $3,800. So it's pretty exciting, all the accomplishments. And I want to take a minute to recognize someone who is really the heavy lifter of the program, and that's Mrs. Danielle Hill. And she's one of my HR managers. And Ms. Hill is now responsible for the EDO, the ABA, all of the bus liability comes through her. She's done a phenomenal job.
Well, I just wanted to say, this is a risk management award. However, this is a HRT award. We could have not done this without every single department. And I really want to give thanks, especially to safety and security, bus operations, bus maintenance, light rail. They're the key to making this all work for us. And just working with them as a team has been wonderful. We've done great things this year, and we plan for great things next year.
I just want to mention, they not only looked at improvement statistics, but they looked at the totality of the effectiveness of the workers' comp program. And those are some of our fundamental core, workers' comp, initiatives. And that was the teamwork, the accountability, the partnership, and how really it's not just us leading it, it's everybody, it's the managers and the employees. And really it's all about safety and having a safe work environment for employees.
And we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm also proud about is our focus on safety. And certainly when we look at the performance of our light rail here, we certainly have one of the safest systems in the country, if not the world. Jim continues to remind me of that. But we did have a recent incident we wanted to share with the board. Very briefly, we gave a more detailed present to the Operations and Oversight Committee. So I'm going to have Mr. Price address that. And also after that, if you could mention the peer maintenance review.
Very good. On Friday, November 18th, the Friday before Thanksgiving, at 12:41 p.m., there was an incident where a pedestrian was struck by a train. Let me give you a little brief description of what happened. A westbound train and an eastbound train passed one another just east of Civic Plaza at Union and Main Streets. After the westbound train passed 3 pedestrians, they started to cross the track from north to south. 2 pedestrians saw the eastbound train and stopped. The 3rd pedestrian did not see the eastbound train and continued walking into the path of the train. The 3rd pedestrian was hit by the train and thrown to the south side of the tracks. The Operational Control Center, when notified, called the EOC, Norfolk EOC, and fire life safety personnel dispatched to the scene. The 3rd pedestrian that was injured was treated at the scene and transported to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The posted speed for the train in this area is 15 miles per hour, and records show that the train was traveling under the speed limit. The intersection had all the required warning signals as determined by the manual on Department conducted their accident investigation and submitted their final report to the State Safety Oversight Office, and we're expecting a letter of acceptance very soon. Following the event, we had a safety stand-down meeting. It was called for Sunday, November 27th, and we shared the findings with the entire light rail operating staff. Staff is currently working with the Traffic Division of Norfolk to identify any possible enhancements to warning signs in that area, see if there's something else we might be able to do. And I say that the Tide is has one of the very best safety records in the country. This is the first accident with an automobile, a bicycle, or pedestrian in its 5-year history that resulted in a personal injury. So, my sad duty to share this information with you, but it could have been a lot worse. So I think we're fortunate, and we're still one of the safest light rail systems in the country.
And certainly one of the things we intend to do is to use this to leverage our safety program because, pedestrians can over time not focus on the potential threat of a moving train. So we're going to engage marketing and communications again, put more information out. But I think, what clearly the record shows is that we did what we were supposed to do. Someone stepped in front of the train. That's what happened. So, can you mention our peer review?
Absolutely. In an effort to continually improve, find ways to get better, we invited 4 transit properties to take a look at our bus maintenance practices, our training, our methodology to inspect our equipment, and share best practices. We had individuals of maintenance responsibilities from St. Louis, from Richmond, from Baltimore, and from Pittsburgh to come in and look over our shoulders. I'm fond of saying that when you're working on something day in and day out, you can kind of go nose blind. You don't see what others could see. So we invited other properties to come in and take a look at what we were doing. We were quite pleased with their findings. Some of the findings were things that we hadn't thought of. It was their best practices that they brought with us, and they left with some of our best practices. So it was a very good 3 days, well spent.
Thank you very much, Jim. We do have guests here with the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We'll be introducing them in a moment. So as we talk about safety and the culture of safety, I think it is important that they are here as well to hear that report. The final piece of my report is in the area of recognitions. We wanted to recognize Mayor Wright today. This would be his last meeting, but we'll have to invite him back in January. I think he had a funeral today. The final recognition is one that's a bit unusual. Rarely do I bring up retirements at a board meeting, but we do have employees that I call pillars. And what I mean by that is they structurally support the organization in so many ways. And today we are celebrating 35 years of incredible service. And wait a minute. In 1979, Claudia Blatho joined us, so joined Pentrans Point as a planner too. She's held several positions here. I can't even name them all, but Director of Marketing and Development, Transit Development Administrator, Records Management Officer is what she's doing now. She's been instrumental in so many efforts to include helping Pentran prepare for the merger with TRT. So that's how far she goes back. And certainly she's been very active in the community as well, supporting Bay Days and the local bus rodeos that we have. She was also in 1999 Vice President of the Transportation Committee of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. So she's been an incredible public servant, and she's very perceptive. This morning when she saw me, she actually glared at me. I think somehow she knew that we wanted to celebrate her. So I think we have something to present here, Mr. Chair. We could get you to present this 35 years of outstanding service. And we're so proud to have her with us.
Thank you all very much. 35 years, incredibly, has gone by very fast. I started working at Pentran when I was 24, and I had a 2-year gap, and I've been here ever since. And it's been wonderful. I have to tell you, I love public transportation. I love Pentran. I love HRT. It's been my life, and so I just have good things to say. I will always remember the career that I had and all the good things that happened while I was here. That's all I can say. Thank you very much.
That concludes your report. Okay. Well, congratulations again. Thank you for your dedicated service.
Mr. Chair, I think we have.
I had one question. At the last meeting I attended, we were advised of our employee who was taking leave as a result of the accident that occurred with the bus. I just wanted to know how she's doing. We're still supporting her.
Yes, I'm going to ask Ms. Ackerman to address that, please.
Actually, spoke with her today. She is on blue cards this week, which means she is out doing her route. And there is another seniority bus driver out there with her. Monday, she starts vacation. The week after that, she'll be back to full duty.
Very good. Just want to make sure you're taking care of it.
Yes, absolutely. That's been an organizational problem.
Absolutely. Very good.
Okay. Committee reports. Audit and Budget Review Committee. Vice Chairman
Yes.
Perry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you, Chairman Willard, Dr. Barrett. Today, the Audit and Budget Committee did meet. We met this morning at 11 a.m. We had a very robust conversation about KPIs, but the crux of the meeting was to discuss our 2016 FY financial audit. Due to the lengthy agenda that we have today, we're going to go right into the review of the FY 2016 audit. Hampton Roads Transit's bylaws require that we have an external CPA firm audit our financial situation every year. Back in May of this current calendar year, Hampton Roads Transit did award a contract to Cherry Becker for those auditing services. Today we will have Krista Edoff as well as Tracy Bedrin, who are the partner and auditing manager respectively for Cherry Becker, present those auditing reports to you today. So I'd like to call Ms. Edoff up to review the FY16 audit statements.
All right, good afternoon, Chairman, Co-Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. I am pleased to be here today to report the results of the June 30, 2016 audit. We were engaged to audit the financial statements of the Commission. In addition to the audit of just the financial statements, which you do have a draft copy of in your board package, the audit also includes the audit of the Commission's compliance with state laws and regulations, as well as the compliance with federal grant compliance. In conducting our audit, we really put forth a 3-phase approach to doing our audit. So the beginning phase would be our planning phase. And during the planning phase, we essentially started in the June-July timeframe, and we sat down with management and key members of the finance team and key members within the organization who are responsible for many of the key processes and procedures that build up to ultimately resulting in this financial statement you see prepared before you today. So in conducting our audit, we are required to gain an understanding of the processes and procedures, but more importantly, the internal controls that the organization has over reporting the financial statements in accordance with GAAP and making sure that there's no material misstatements to those financial statements. So as part of our audit, in talking to you today, I'm going to focus on the 3 significant areas that we consider as part of our audit. However, we do audit these significant balances and transactions thoroughly in detail as you see them presented in the report. However, I'm going to focus on the 3 key areas, and what we consider to be the most significant areas within the financial statements relates to revenues, payroll, and then the cost allocation plan with how expenditures are allocated and then ultimately what's billed to the localities to pay to cover any deficit balances. So in conducting our audit, we do sit down, gain an understanding of the revenue cycle, how cash is collected. We did go down to the money room and see exactly how the bus fares are recorded, put into the safe, taken to the bank, and then we did test of controls to determine the daily cash reconciliation and making sure what gets collected ultimately gets deposited and then what gets recorded. And so for all the significant cycles that the commission has, we do that sort of gaining an understanding of and performing the various walkthroughs. And some of the key areas, we also do the test of controls. Now in doing our test of controls and gaining that understanding of controls, it's really to help us design our audit and plan the additional procedures we're going to perform to make sure that we have sufficient appropriate audit evidence to issue an opinion on these financial statements. In doing that, we do not issue a separate report on internal controls. So if some of you are familiar with SOX 404, internal control reporting, we do not issue a separate opinion specifically on internal controls. However, in gaining our understanding and in conducting any tests that we do of internal controls, we would be required to report any significant deficiencies in the control environment to you. And that would be included in the schedule of findings and question costs in our audit reports. So again, I mentioned the revenue cycle. In addition to that, we did significant tests over payroll, and then we did the significant gaining and understanding over the cost allocation plan. Once we have that understanding of your operating environment, how the financials get created, then we can determine what additional substantive testing we conduct in performing our procedures to make sure that what's presented here is materially stated. So additional procedures that we would do, we do some high-level analytics. So when I talk about passenger fares, you have about 16 million in passenger fares. In doing that, again, the daily collections are taken, they're reconciled daily, they're put into the bank. So we did our test of controls over those types of transactions. When it comes to passenger fare, really what that is based on ridership. So we can get reports that determine how many riders you had throughout the year. We know a rough estimate of what the cost per rider is, and so we can really predict what the revenues for that are based on how many passengers you had. And so we'll do testing of that nature. We'll also do, you have approximately $125 million in federal, state grants, and then subsidies. And so in our testing of those, we did confirmations. So we reached out directly to the localities, we reached out directly to the state and the federal government to confirm exactly the amount of money that they gave you for the year. And so those are just an example of the types of procedures we conduct in our audit. Again, I'm focusing on revenue. We do similar procedures for payroll. There's payroll reports that we look at. There's analytics based on the number of employees that you have. We look analytically at the fringe benefits that you have, and we'll look at the payroll taxes, and we'll do ratios and calculations and percentages over those different balances. And so if I looked at the total expenditures of the commission, it's 128-ish million of operating expenses. Payroll expense represents almost half of that. So as you can see, that would be a significant piece of our audit. Once we have done all of our testing, and again, I've just kind of given you a brief highlight of some of the key areas, If you looked at the balance sheet, you'll also see cash, capital assets, inventory. Again, we did do procedures over those areas. I'm just not focusing on them in detail. However, once we have finished all of our procedures, really it's the culmination of working with management to produce this financial statement that you see in front of you today. So we audited the financial information, the numbers that you see. We work with management to put together the detailed disclosures that you see that kind of give a little bit of detail and history behind what those numbers mean, the different accounting for those numbers, and ultimately the audit ends with presenting the results to you today and you accepting that audit. So now that I've told you kind of what we do with the audit, I'm going to give you the official results. So I told you that we were engaged to audit 3 different things. So we do issue 3 different reports. One is over the financial statements, one is over compliance with the state's laws and regulation, and one is over compliance with federal grants. So I am pleased to report to you that we did issue unmodified opinions on all 3 reports. Now, an unmodified opinion is a clean opinion, and it is the best opinion you would hope for as the result of the audit. I also mentioned to you that if we had any matters that we identified as significant deficiencies in internal control, or if we had any matters of non-compliance, I would be required to report those to you. They would also be in our audit opinion. Again, we did not have any matters of internal control to report to you or any matters of non-compliance. So again, clean audit, clean opinions, no findings, best result you could hope for in an audit. In wrapping up the audit results, there are some additional things I'm required to tell you. Even though you've got a clean audit opinion, there could be some things that happen throughout the audit that we would be required to tell you that you might want to know about. So if we had disagreements with management, if we had any difficulties in performing the audit, if we posted or proposed any significant audit adjustments, even though that's not going to probably be identified in our report, it would probably be something you would want to know about. And we are required to tell you, but I am pleased to report that there were no items of that nature. So we had a great relationship with management, finance staff throughout the audit. No difficulties in performing the audit, no disagreements, and we did not propose any material audit adjustments. So in wrapping up the other things I'm required to tell you, in order to conduct an audit, we are required to be independent of the commission. That essentially means it's equivalent to your conflicts of interest. So I essentially have no family relationships or anything that would create or cause bias to give you this audit opinion that maybe you didn't warrant. So also in conducting our audit, there's a few additional things I want to tell you about the actual financials themselves. There were no changes in any of the accounting policies or practices for the year end that would create kind of differences if you look back at prior years. So there was really no change in accounting principles or in accounting policies and practices. Built into these financial statements, there are some significant estimates. So not every number is a hard and true number. It's based on some underlying assumption to calculate that information. So the main items are going to be your depreciation expense, because really that could vary if the useful life differs from what management says the estimated useful life is. Any allowances for doubtful accounts, really those are based on historical collections and what you think you might not collect in the future from someone. Any of the actuarial computed liabilities that are in here, pension, self-insurance, those are based on underlying information, historical information, and ultimately future information and liabilities that the commission might have. And so the actuary uses some underlying assumptions to come up with those liabilities. And so for pension liabilities, it's really based on the mortality tables and the lives that the employees will live and how long they'll receive pension benefits from the commission. And so again, it's something that's computed by the actuary. It's based on estimates. It's not really a hard and fast number. Any change in that estimate could ultimately change the final results of that liability. So we do want to point that out to you. So in wrapping up, At the conclusion of every audit, we do make management represent to us that the financial statements are materially correct, that there was no fraud or error as a result in these financial statements, and that ultimately that they have given us everything that we asked for to conduct our audit, that nothing was hidden from us, and that's what we have management represent to us at the conclusion of the audit. So with that, that's really the results of our audit this year. I will take any questions, but I would first like to thank Mr. Singleton and all of his finance staff and others throughout the organization that did help us in the course of the audit this year.
Are there any questions for our auditing firm?
Just so the public knows, this is the second time that most of us have seen this in the last 2 hours. So there were questions.
I would also like to thank Ms. Edolph and her staff and Cherry Record for the opportunity to work with them. They are very tough. They made us feel uncomfortable at times with a lot of questions that they asked, but I think it was all in the discovery phase and understanding how this transit system that we call Hampton Roads Transit works. I would like to also thank my management staff, Ms. Sampson, Ms. Shanahan, Ms. Ball, Ms. Glass over here in her absence, Ms. Dixon. These are the people that make me look as good as I look today in terms of having my boss, Mr. Harold, let the cat out of the bag, but 4 years of clean audits with no findings. So I definitely want to ask them to stand and take a bow. These are the individuals of the finance department that do the heavy lifting. I just come up and say a couple of words and take a bow and leave. So these are the people who actually do the heavy lifting. So I think I've said enough. And Dr. Woodbury, we would respectfully like to ask that this commission receive the audit and accept it as stated.
Our audit and budget committee came to the conclusion that we would like to recommend that this Board of Commissioners accept this audit and file it.
So that comes as a recommendation from the Budget and Audit Committee. We do need a second for that.
Second.
So a second by Commissioner Ross Hammond. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the vote, please.
Chairman Wood?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Openshaw?
Yes, and good job.
Mr. Moffitt?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Riddick?
Yes.
Mr. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Paxton?
Yes.
Mr. Ross Hammond?
Yes. And may I also point out, we have a wonderful internal auditor as well, Ms. Denical. Really does a wonderful job and keeps us on our toes all year long.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that concludes the audit budget presentation for today.
Okay. Operations and Oversight Committee, Commissioner Moffitt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sampson will be presenting on behalf of the committee.
Good afternoon,
Roll
Chairman.
call again.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wood and the members of the commission. One procurement action was presented to the Operations and Oversight Committee and approved for recommendation to the board. Details of the acquisition and procurement strategy are a part of your agendas, and it's contract number 16-72041 for custodial services. It is respectfully recommended that the commission approve the award of a contract for custodial services to Diversified Building Services in a not to exceed amount of $1,616,684.43. This contract will be awarded for a base period of 1 year with 4 additional 1-year options and will be funded with operating funds. A DB goal of 4% was established for the solicitation, and Diversified has committed to 4% DB participation.
Move adoption.
Second. Any discussion? Questions? Okay, call the roll, please.
Chairman Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Yes.
Commissioner Scarr,
Yes.
Commissioner Overshaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Moffitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Tanoa,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Riddick,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rosshamer.
Yes.
Chair, contract has been approved.
Okay, Planning and New Stars Development Committee, Commissioner West is here, I don't think they've met. Do we have a paratransit committee?
No, we don't, there's no meeting, there's no report from that committee. That committee will meet again on next Wednesday.
Okay. Track, Mr. Battle, I saw him here. There he is.
Yes, and I've been out for the past few months due to college and quizzes, and I'm happy to be back here. I have exams next week, please wish me luck. And I heard it was no representative last month, so I'm here now. Track did meet Wednesday, November 2nd, and attendance were 4 track members with Commissioner Hunter, 2 guests from Newport News, and 7 HRT employees. The Newport News guests submitted their applications for track membership. And I'll be happy to join. Make sure that during the meeting, track reviewed the upcoming service changes for the January report, and also see details about the Fear Bus Service draft plan for the View Beach Lacto extension presented by Mr. Ray Russo, Tree Book Planning and Development, which apparently may not vote. Not so sad. Track members discussed the Peninsula Corridor study and how to access information online. And lastly, the track chair encouraged everyone to vote during the upcoming election. We continue to vote for public transportation advocacy whenever possible. And then the next track meeting will be on Wednesday, January 4th, right here in this building at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Good luck on your exams.
We're all sad about that too.
Yes.
I feel you on that. Okay, moving to old new business. So we're going to start with the overview of rail state safety oversight by the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler, can you introduce our guest, please?
Sure. Today we have with us the representatives from DRPT. They manage state safety oversight here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we have Sharmila Samar-Singh and Andrew Ennis. And respectively, Sharmila watches over WMATA in Washington, D.C., and Andrew watches over HRT State Safety Oversight Wise. So they're going to give a presentation, which they will be giving to the board on a bi-yearly basis based on MAP 21 regulations, and I'll let them start the presentation.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Will.
Well, can either of these other two things be done quickly?
Actually, there's, I think, a presentation on Title VI. The resolution on 06/2016 would just require a vote on behalf of the commission. And there is a resolution in the package for that.
Go ahead, let's move to that one while they're getting set up.
Resolution 06/2016, resolution of the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads adopting the update to the Hampton Roads Transit Capital Improvement Plan and Transit Development Plan for FY 2017 through FY 2023. Whereas the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation has required all transit agencies in Virginia to complete a 6-year plan for operations and capital improvements, Hampton Roads Transit has developed an update to the HRT Capital Improvement Plan and the Transit Development Plan for fiscal year 2017 through fiscal year 2023. Whereas the TDP will serve as a management and guidance document for HRT. Whereas the TDP will provide the basis for inclusion of Hampton Roads Transit's capital operating programs and programming and planning documents, including the 6-year capital operating improvement program. Whereas the TDP will support the development of a fiscally constrained annual capital and operating plan. Whereas the TDP will serve to maximize the investment of public funds and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of public transportation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads adopts the attached updated HRT Capital Improvement Plan and Transit Development Plan fiscal years 2017 through fiscal year 2023. If you so choose, it will be approved and adopted by the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads at its meeting on the 8th day of December 2016.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion by Commissioner Woodbury, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Okay, let's call the vote.
Chairman Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Yes.
Commissioner Farley,
Yes.
Commissioner Openshaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Moffitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Cannell,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Riddick,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
Yes.
Commissioner Roxanne.
Yes.
Chairman, resolution number 16.
Okay, it looks like our technology is fixed, so we'll introduce the safety officer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, distinguished members of the public, media representatives who might be here, and the HRT staff. My name is Shamila Samarasinghe, and I'm from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And I'm here with my staff, Andrew Ennis, to present to you all an overview of the Rail State Safety Oversight Program that the Department of Rail and Public Transportation conducts on the Tide Light Rail system. Before I get started, I would like to benchmark a few words so that we have a very good understanding about what we are going to be covering. As far as rail, one thing I want to make sure everybody understands is by rail, what we mean here is rail systems that are not part of the general railroad system. So systems that are not under the authority of the Federal Railroads Administration come under this regulation, the Rail State Safety Oversight System. Rail fixed guideway systems that we are talking about here are similar to the Tide Light Rail system in Norfolk here, the Washington Metro Rail system, the New York City Metro, essentially systems that are largely confined to metropolitan areas, which have unique characteristics within their design, their rail vehicles, their track system, their operating practices, and so forth. When we talk about safety here, we are not talking about OSHA standards. We are talking about the entire gamut of departments and systems and practices within the rail fixed guideway system that support the rail operation and the safe rail operation. So we are talking about human resources, training, maintenance practices, the way that procurement is conducted to purchase vehicles and build infrastructure. That's what we are talking about, rail safety. When we talk about oversight, there is a clear demarcation between the light rail systems or the rail system's responsibility in conducting operations and the state's responsibility in overseeing that operation. The state does not participate in the operating activities of the rail fixed guideway system that it oversees. So with that said, I would like to go ahead and cover the rest of the material that we are going to cover. As I mentioned, there is a regulation that dictates two parts. One is that rail fixed guideway systems, like the ones that I just talked about, that are within a given state, The state within which it resides is responsible for overseeing the safety and security of those rail systems. The second part of that regulation says that the state has the responsibility to designate an oversight entity to conduct these oversight activities. So in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the designated entity is the Department of Rail and Public Transportation to conduct state safety oversight. For the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, there are two systems that we oversee. The Tide Light Rail system here in Norfolk, and as well as the Washington Metro Rail system in the Washington, D.C. region. There have been several regulations over the years, over the last 20 years, that have evolved to where we are today as far as state safety oversight. Much of the regulations track behind significant catastrophic accidents, unfortunately. The most significant change in terms of regulation happened in 2012 when the MAP 21 statute was passed. There were sweeping changes to the state safety oversight programs across the country that are being currently brought into place. And I will describe those to you all later in our presentation. There is an organizational structure and leadership structure that supports the work that we do within the Commonwealth of Virginia. My team that consists of myself, Andrew Ennis, and another individual who's dedicated to state safety oversight on the Washington Metro Rail system make up the state safety oversight team at the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We report directly to our agency director, Jennifer Mitchell, and then we are required to provide reporting out to the Secretary of Transportation all the way up to the Governor's office. And this structure and leadership structure, as well as the way that we are partitioned within the organization at DRPT, as well as the reporting structure that goes all the way up to the chief executive of the state, is defined in the regulation that I was talking to you about. In the next few slides, Andrew will talk about the day-to-day activities that we conduct at the Tide Light Rail system, and then I will cover very briefly at the very end the kinds of regulatory changes that have been enacted through MAP 21, which will impact the Tide system, DRPT, as well as the activities of this commission. Andrew?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Commission, for having us here today. As Sean was stated, my name is Andrew Ennis. I'm the State Safety Oversight Program Manager for HRT for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. For the next few minutes, we're going to go over the programmatic aspects of state safety oversight here for HRT, and I really want to keep it to really the four main aspects of our interaction in state safety oversight here at HRT, and that's really going to be looking at, of HRT's system safety, security, and emergency preparedness plans, what's the primary document out of that bundle of documents that we really work with the most. And then from there, we'll get into the state's role with accidents and incidents here on the system, audits, and then corrective actions as well. So like I said, of all of HRT's system safety, security, and emergency management plans, really the primary document that we use to evaluate, ascertain the safety posture and the safety health of HRT Tide system is the System Safety Program Plan. This is a pretty wide-ranging plan. It covers, as Sharma had mentioned, everything from procurement to human resources, accident incident investigations, employee training, LRB maintenance. It's very, very wide-ranging. This document is agency-wide, and I do want to point out, as Sharma had already mentioned, this does have mention to HRT's bus system, but I do want to just make sure that everyone understands our regulatory oversight is only over the light rail here. We do not extend to HRT's bus system. We do not extend to the paratransit or the ferry system. This document is required to be annually reviewed and updated under the custody and guidance of the Chief Safety and Security Officer here at HRT, and it is also annually reviewed and approved and ultimately certified by the state. That has to be done on an annual basis as part of our report up to the FTA. I'd like to talk about the state's role with accidents, and this kind of touches on some discussion that Mr. Price just brought up, and we might spend a little bit extra time on this slide than I had originally planned. So FTA requires that the state be made aware of certain incidents on the alignment within prescribed time periods. Prescribed time periods are based on the particular incident. So some examples would be a fatality on the right-of-way, a collision with a pedestrian or a car on the right-of-way or within the right-of-way of the alignment, evacuation of a train for life safety reasons, damages above a certain dollar threshold we need to be notified about. Okay. From there, we move into the investigations, and DRPT State Safety Oversight has the regulatory authority to be able to investigate every single reportable incident and accident that happens on the line. Currently, we delegate that investigative authority for now to HRT. Okay. Under the close oversight of the state, HRT will conduct that investigation on the state's behalf. At the conclusion of that investigation, there is a final report. That final report is submitted to the state. The state then goes through a thorough review process. Should there be no issues, then the state officially adopts that accident report. And at that point in time, that accident investigation now becomes the state's official report on that incident. To kind of tie this in, this is a great example with what Mr. Price had brought up. We did just recently have this incident on the alignment. Notification was done by the interim CSSO well within the prescribed time period of the incident happening. I was made aware of it. I was updated throughout the process of that individual being on scene. I was received within the prescribed time period a fact report as required. And then, as Mr. Price had stated, HRT has submitted the final report to myself. It's currently being reviewed. I'm expected to probably have that wrapped up by the end of the week or early part of next week. So that's a good example, and I'm glad for Mr. Price to bring that up to just kind of show how the process works. Okay. A couple things I do want to make a note of, though. State Safety Oversight does have the authority to be able to step in at any point in an investigation. Should we see any irregularities from the accident investigation process and procedures that HRT follows? Should we see maybe any instances that could point out some kind of conflicts of interest or anything like that? We do have the authority to be able to step in and at that point take over the investigation. And then lastly, I do want to mention, should the severity of an incident be so high that the NTSB would be called or put involved, at that point the NTSB would be the lead on that particular incident investigation, and the state would be a party to the NTSB's investigation. I want to talk next about the state's role in audits. Again, FTA requires that the state audit the entirety of the program once within a 3-year period. What we have done in coordination with HRT and HRT's internal management department, we break this program up and we audit it on a continual basis over a 3-year cycle. So it's just a continual observation and audit of the program. And a good way to kind of conceptualize that would be, think about snapshots. Every audit that we're doing over that 3-year period is a particular handful of elements within the program, and it's a snapshot of those elements and where they're at that particular time. And then at the end of a 3-year period, it gives us a fairly nice sample of how the program is going, and we just keep on repeating. So it's a great ongoing process. As far as our actual audit process, it's very formalized, and again, we do joint audits with the internal audit department, and it's a great collaboration and coordination. There is definitely notification and document reviews. We do issue a final report. Prior to issuing the final report, I do like to issue, and we require that we issue the draft report to HRT for them to be able to give it a review within a prescribed period of time. And really the idea behind doing that is to give HRT the opportunity to maybe identify any factual inaccuracies within the draft report before we get them put into the final report and it's on there. So kind of rounding up here, I'd like to talk about corrective actions, corrective action plans. Two things I'd like to make note of before we get into this is, one, corrective action plan, unlike what it sounds like, corrective action plans in and of themselves are not a negative. Corrective action plans are just part and parcel of doing this work. There's always going to be corrective action plans. If we're seeing that there's no corrective action plans over a period of time, we're going to start to wonder, we're going to start to ask questions about maybe is the program really robust enough? Is the program really doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is moving the safety system, the safety program here forward constantly. So it's certainly not something to be looked at as a black mark on HRT's record by any means. And then secondly, as Sharmila had stated, state safety oversight is particular to each state, and each state's systems that are within them are very different, different operating environments and what have you. So we really, really try and steer clear of trying to do comparisons, because you just really can't. Each alignment in each state is very different. So we do want to try and just point those two items out. A corrective action plan, as it would imply, it's a detailed plan for correcting a deficiency in safety or security. Okay? They can be generated by accidents and investigations, dependent on root causal factors and findings from an investigation report. Those could generate corrective actions. They could also be generated, obviously, out of audits. The other thing that they can be coming out of is just an observation. A DRPT systems technician could notice something along the alignment, brings it to the attention of the safety department, and then that would initiate an investigation into that, and then now you could have a corrective action. So those are really kind of the three key places where we pick those up. The state's role in those, we have to approve every corrective action that is generated for HRT safety. We have to very closely monitor the progress on those corrective actions, and then ultimately, based on the documentation submitted, possibly any kind of on-site verifications or on-site visits, interviews, or what have you, the state then ultimately closes out and certifies that the corrective action has been met. So that's really kind of how we round that out. And I just want to finish up. This is the end of the 2016 cycle. As you saw up there with the audits, we did have 2 audits this year. They went very well. I wanted to just kind of point out just a few of the many best practices and highlights here at HRT. HRT Tide has a lot to be proud of here, and it's the result of the hard work that everybody in operations, maintenance, safety, and security. It's a real. You guys have a lot to be proud of here. It's great. I do specifically just want to make a point that HRT safety and DRPT state safety oversight, we really enjoy a very collaborative and just a great partnership, relationship. That is not very common across oversight with agencies. So, I can just speaking for myself, it's definitely a privilege working with this agency, and anything, and I look forward to continuing to working with this agency in the future to move safety and security for not only the employees here at HRT's light rail system, but also for the riding public. It's a great relationship, and it certainly makes it easier for you guys to make gains in the future. So with that, I'm going to wrap that up, and Sharma's going to go ahead and come back up here and talk about kind of things moving forward and what to expect here in the coming future with state safety oversight.
So just reminding you all about the slide that I had a few slides into my presentation. I talked about the regulation and the fact that in 2012 there were sweeping changes to the state safety oversight regulation as we have it today. And those sweeping changes, I've kind of taken the highlights of those just for your reference. One of the things that the new regulation now requires is that the state safety oversight entity be legally independent of the rail transit system that it oversees. In some parts of the country, in some states, it used to be that the rail system employees used to sometimes conduct state safety oversight functions, which was obviously a conflict of interest. In some cases, the rail system generated certain revenues to fund the rail state safety oversight activities. Again, a conflict of interest. So that's one of the things that the regulation now moves to preclude. The next aspect is to have dedicated staff conducting state safety oversight within the state. And so as I mentioned to you, Andrew Ennis is the dedicated full-time person from DRPT who conducts state safety oversight activities on the Tide light rail system. And the rule also now requires that this staff should be competent, have the skill sets that are required, and be very, very familiar with the rail system that they oversee. So there is a move to make the skill sets consistent across the country. And then finally, this is one of the most significant pieces of the regulation, is that beyond just the state safety oversight entity making recommendations, the new regulation now describes that the rail state safety oversight entity has enforcement authority. And what does this mean? What this means is, Andrew talked about the collaborative relationship. And so the regulation now leaves no room for, if that collaboration falls apart, what happens? The rule now makes quite clear that if there are egregious failures within a rail system that the state oversees, and the rail system is reluctant to make any corrective actions, then the state system of oversight can move to compel that rail transit system to take action to correct those issues and make sure that those actions are completed. So that's what the enforcement authority is. And finally, one thing overall in the way that state safety oversight and rail system safety is managed has been changed. It has been raised up to the highest level of authority within the rail transit systems. And by that what I mean is governing bodies such as yours have been essentially put into the focus of making the determination, is the rail system in a state of good repair? If not, what are the capital investments, what are the changes to programs and procedures that need to be made in order to make sure that those rail systems move to a state of good repair. So with that, I would like to make sure you understand going forward every 6 months, the RPT will be reporting or coming to you all with an update on the highlights of the program that we see, any concerns that we might have, and essentially making sure you all are aware of the ongoing practices, successes, and concerns that you all might need to be concerned about and consider in terms of the actions you all take within this commission. Similarly, we are required to report up to the governor on an annual basis, prepare an annual report of the same kind of information, outlining the successful practices as well as areas of concern that we might have in terms of high light rail system and the safety performance of it. DRPT has 3 years in order to comply with these new regulations that were rolled out earlier this year, and we are well on our way to complying with those. With that, I conclude my presentation. If you all have any other questions, I'll be more than glad to cover that information now. If there are any facts or figures that you all want, and if I am not able to follow those up through memory, I'll be more than glad to send those through to you through HRT staff. So thank you very much for your time. And if you all have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Recently, the federal government had been increasing pressure on the jurisdictions to create the new Safety Oversight Commission by having the Federal Transit Agency take over Metro Safety Oversight, and that threatening federal funding should the commission not be finalized by February 2017, and that's going to affect not only the system up north, but including the Tide 2, which has a great safety record, but at the end of the day, if the federal funding gets pulled, it's going to affect the Tide 2. But
Okay, excuse me, ma'am,
go ahead.
this is just for the commission you can touch base with her afterwards, but this is strictly for the commission business to ask questions and that sort of thing. So are there any other questions from the commission on this? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next is resolution 05-2016, Title 6 equity analysis.
We have a short presentation, so bear with us. As you may recall, that anytime this agency moves forward in either a change in the fare, an introduction of a fare type, whether it's removal of one or introducing a new one, or substantial changes in service, either up or down, we are required, because we're a recipient of federal operating assistance, to present it to our policy board, the commission. As such, today we're here to present a presentation. If you recall, Mr. Harrell introduced on July 1st a direction by staff to try a 6-month demonstration program called the Student Freedom Pass Program. We're coming up on that end of time period. December 31st is the end of the 6-month demonstration. By law, it says anything 1 day beyond the 6 months becomes permanent. Therefore, our due diligence for the commission is to give an analysis, an equity analysis of that new fare type. With that, we have Jamie Jackson, Director of Transit Development, but she wears the second half for HRT, and that is a Title VI Compliance Officer. And that's the role she's playing here today. She's going to report out on the Student Freedom Pass Program, the overview of that pilot program. Jamie.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Again, my name is Jamie Jackson. I'm the Director of Transit Development for HRT, and of course I serve as the Title VI Compliance Officer. My purpose here is to present to you information regarding the Title VI Equity Analysis for the Student Freedom Pass Program. I have provided an overview of the program just for your review. However, again, my purpose today is actually to go more in depth for Title VI and an overview of Title VI and the purpose of that federal statute. Members of the commission that have been on the commission, you may remember that a report was given to you in 2014 regarding Title VI. However, if you're newer to the commission, we wanted to make sure that, one, you had information regarding Title VI for the context of the resolution that we're requesting that you vote on shortly, but also, again, as a refresher for context about really what is Title VI and why is it important to HRT and, of course, all training providers. So, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it prohibits discrimination based on race and ensures that no person, regardless of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in or denied the benefits of programs or activities that receive federal funding. As you're aware, HRT is a recipient of federal funds, so we need to be in compliance with Title VI in our programs and activities. I've also included at the bottom, again, as part of this overview, Executive Order 12898. So this promotes non-discrimination in federal programs that affect both minority and low-income communities. So sometimes you may have heard the term environmental justice. These are environmental or EJ communities, again, low-income and minority communities. So agencies must identify and address policies and activities that may have a disproportionate effect on these populations. And again, as a reminder, our Title VI program was updated and adopted on April 14th, 2014. So what is an equity analysis? What am I going to explain to you regarding this equity analysis for the Student Freedom Pass program? So as required by Title VI and HRT's Title VI program policies, staff is required to perform an equity analysis in 2 cases. So we have those for fare changes and, of course, service changes, but this program or this pass analysis that we're doing today is considered a fare change. So the addition of the Student Freedom Pass program to actual fare is an addition of a new fare type and is considered a fare change. The purpose of HRT's 9-step fare impact policy and procedure is to identify the proposed action and if it's discriminatory and or has a disparate impact on identified protected Title VI groups. And I will go into those groups in just a second. So disparate and disproportionate impact policy. Again, this is part of our Title VI program. So the FTA defines disparate impacts as neutral policies or practices that have the effect of disproportionately excluding or adversely impacting members of protected groups under Title VI. So Title VI populations include, and again, this is just to give you some context and background, American Indian and Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, again, those who are identified by their national origin, and those EJ populations, which I mentioned before, which can include both minority and low-income populations. So how do we determine whether there's a disparate or disproportionate impact? So our policy defines that this impact occurs if the fare rate change is greater than 5 percentage points as compared to non-Title VI populations. So if the determination of this analysis, which I'll go into shortly, is that an impact occurs, then we need to put in place strategies or mitigation strategies or address how those impacts occur against those particular populations. So now I'm going to go into the fare equity analysis piece. I gave you a little bit of background on Title VI, who's impacted, how you can be impacted, and now I need to go into the Student Freedom Pass program and how these groups may or may not have been impacted by the program. My apologies. So the proposed action that we have is that we make the Student Freedom Pass program a permanent fare type, which will go into effect January 1st of 2017. The actual fare for the pass is $0 for those who are eligible for the program and that have that Student Freedom Pass or as required by the program. The Student Freedom Pass currently is, again, in a pilot program phase or pilot program state until the end of this year, which is December 31st, 2016. On January 1st, 2017, again, the modified action, what change is actually occurring with these groups? We will have a new fare type, which again, is the student freedom pass. And that introduction is just, the change of the fare will become permanent. It will still be $0. So our equity impact analysis. This may be a little bit hard to see, however, I'm mainly going to refer you to the end of the chart, which show the percent minority and percent low income. So our equity analysis evaluated the existing fares under the pilot program for both youth and minority users. So, I'm sorry, minority youth and minority low income users. Staff followed the current policy in place to determine if there were any impacts to Title VI populations under the program. The data that we utilized here, the numbers that you see, is from our 2014 Origin and Destination, or O&D survey, which indicates that approximately 82% of our riders or system users belong to a minority group, and about 63% of those users belong to low-income users or persons in this group. The percentage of youth who identified as minority and or low income is identified in this table that's presented to you. So you can see youth, those under the age of 18, that's 89% are identified as minority. Youth under the age of 18 are identified, 79% of them identified as low income. So the table shows that the percentage of HRT transit users that are identified, again, 17 and under, display a higher percentage of either being minority or being low income as compared to the system average. So the purpose of our analysis was to determine whether the introduction of this new fare type had a disparate or disproportionate impact on minority and low income users, bearing a rate change of greater than 5 percentage points as, again, compared to non-minority and non-low income populations as described in our policy, in our Title VI program policy and the services and standards section. I'll also note, as we did this analysis, and one key component is that this program is available for all system users. So regardless of race or income, it is available for all youth under the age of 17. So our conclusions. The Student Freedom Pass is a new fare type and is available to all youth, irrespective of race or income. There's no monetary change for non-minority and minority and low income and non-low income youth because it's a new fare type. So we have introduced a new fare, so that, again, there's no change for that particular group. So the rate change of percentage points in comparison to those groups is 0. So the Title VI analysis determination is that the proposed introduction does not impose either an adverse or disparate impact, nor does it provide a disproportionate burden to youth identified as minority or low income. So thus it is concluded by me as a Title VI officer and my staff that the proposed introduction or fare change, as we're calling this fare type, would not result in either disparate or disproportionate impacts to either low income or minority populations. However, we did want to identify some considerations, and I think this chart is pretty interesting from our perspective about future, potential future Title VI impacts. So the Title VI analysis shows the change or introduction of the Student Freedom Pass fare type would have a 7% change in percentage points above the system average to benefit identified minorities. So what we see in this program is that when we introduced it, there is an obvious or apparent benefit to minority youth, 7% above the system average. The findings of the analysis also show that the change or introduction of the Student Freedom Pass fare type indicates the introduction of the program, and fare type would have a 16% positive change in percentage points against the system average to benefit those youth who identify themselves as low income. So the program and fare type, it becomes permanent on January 1st, 2017. Future modifications and changes in the program could require HRT provide a substantial legitimate justification for any proposed changes of the program. So in this case, if that did occur, we would just be required to mitigate or address any potential impacts of the changes. So as you approve this Title VI equity analysis, and again, I'll get to the requested actions from the Commission shortly, We just want to identify or just realize that it requires HRT to perform a Title VI equity analysis and implement a mitigation strategy if impacts are shown. And this is for any program that HRT does, fair change or service changes as well. So our board action. So as a requirement of Title VI and our Title VI program, we are required to have public outreach and public engagement. HRT staff did perform that public outreach and engagement, participated in over 19 outreach, physical outreach activities, social media activities, print material, website material. So that action did occur, and again, we need to present that information to say that that was identified and completed. The Title VI policy also requires the policy board of the transit agency to demonstrate the consideration, awareness, and approval of each equity analysis. So we need to provide this information to you, as I presented in our report, and ensure that you are aware of how the analysis was performed and the results. And finally, the resolution for adoption of the equity analysis for the Student Freedom Pass program, fair type. That information is in your material, and that is what we are requesting be adopted today. That is my conclusion. However, I do want to thank my staff and my team. Samantha Sink is here. She provided great support on this project, and of course my supervisor, Ray Amaruso. I also want to say a special thank you to the program initiates, which is the Marketing and Communications Department, under the leadership of Gene Classes, who helped provide us the information and material so that we could present this Title VI analysis and presentation to you today. So thank you for your time.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments, so is there a motion to adopt? Second. Motion by Commissioner Fuller, seconded by Commissioner Coleman.
I'll need to read it first.
Okay, go ahead.
Resolution 05-2016, Title VI Equity Analysis for Student Freedom Pass Program Fair. A resolution of the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads approving the Title VI Equity Analysis for Student Freedom Pass Program Fair. Whereas pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. Section 2000, lowercase d, sec, and 23 CFR Part 41, the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Transit Administration prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin. And whereas the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads adopted the Hampton Roads Transit 2014 Title VI program through Resolution 01-2014 on the 24th day of January 2014 in compliance with federal law and FDA policy. And whereas the adopted HRT 2014 Title VI program requires that the Commission demonstrate the consideration, awareness, and approval of the Title VI equity analysis results for each proposed major service or fare change prior to approval or implementation of the proposed change. And whereas Hampton Roads Transit has proposed a Student Freedom Pass program fare for permanent implementation starting on January 1st, 2017. And whereas Hampton Roads Transit has completed a Title VI equity analysis on the proposed program fare and reported the results of the analysis to the Commission for full consideration. And whereas Hampton Roads Transit has completed meaningful and comprehensive public outreach on the proposed changes and reported the results of the public outreach to the Commission for full consideration. And whereas the Title VI equity analysis included a full discussion of any potential disparate or disproportionate impacts in regards to race, color, national origin, or income. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads has given full consideration of, is aware of, and approves the equity analysis for the proposed January 2017 Student Freedom Pass program. If so voted, it will be approved by the Transportation District Commission of Hampton Roads at its meeting on the 8th day of December 2006.
Okay, so we have.
That's what I said earlier.
That's what I heard, but I guess. So is there any other further discussion on this? Yes, sir.
Move first. Motion for second.
I second. First, second.
You want me to read it again so you get the...
Yeah.
Chairman Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Woodbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Fuller,
Yes.
Commissioner Story,
Yes.
Commissioner Openshaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Moffitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Canard,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Riddick,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnell, Commissioner Patton,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross Hammer.
Yes.
Resolution 05 has been approved.
Okay. Any comments by commission members?
Yes, I want to welcome everybody in January to come back to Peninsula for the meeting. In case you've lost, don't remember the directions, I'll be glad to work with you.
I was thinking we'd get all the way to the end without that. Any other comments by commission members? There's one comment that Commissioner Parnell brought up earlier. I did want to address that regarding notification, that sort of thing. And I've asked the CEO and the commission attorney to work together to craft any plans for notification that also protects the commission. So if y'all could come back with that in January, that would be really great. Okay? Hey, hearing nothing else, pardon me? Happy holidays also. The meeting, as Commissioner Woodbury mentioned, is in Hampton. Some of you have never been to the HRT.
You won't want to go anywhere else after that.
We'll see about that.